There's been a lot of discussion online about Resident Evil 4 Remake's addition of yellow paint and yellow tape to the boxes and windows scattered throughout the game world. The boxes are the ones that you can break open for ammo, herbs, and other goodies, and the windows are the ones that Leon can dive through. So, of course, this is all in aid of guiding the player and letting the player know that these are the boxes that can be broken and these are the windows that can be dove through. But this is a separate issue, in my opinion, to accessibility, which, if the game wanted to add this as an accessibility feature, for instance, similar to colorblind mode, then I have no problem with this at all. However, I do take issue with the idea that this is a necessary addition or an addition that majority of players wanted out of the game. To explain this fully, we have to look back at the era in which Resident Evil 4 was initially released, and the climate surrounding what most people believe was the dumbing down of games. Even though I think Resident Evil 4 was a very intelligent game, it has started a trend of having QuickTime events, for instance, which a lot of people thought were awful. Resident Evil 4, in my opinion, did it really well, and the only other game I can think of that has done it as well as Resi 4 is probably God of War. But other than the QuickTime events in the cutscenes specifically, the entire game hinged around the level design and the enemy AI, and how that would organically create these action set pieces where you felt like you were the star in an action movie. It put you in the shoes of Leon Kennedy. And there was nothing telling you specifically, for instance, to shoot the barrel that then rolls down the hill and explodes, killing a load of zombies. Or there was nothing popping up saying that you needed to shoot the driver as the big truck was coming towards you. It was all done in an organic way where the game trusted you, the player, to make these split-second decisions and create these action set pieces. We then move on to Resi 5, which of course stripped back a lot of these things that made Resident Evil 4 good, because it wanted to focus on the online gameplay. And then it culminated in Resident Evil 6, where there is literally a section in the game where you are supposed to move forward, and even if you press the button, even if you press the directional button back, Leon will still continue to move forward. Like, it tells you exactly what to do for a lot of that game, and there is no other way of doing it. You just have to do whatever the game tells you to do. So to put a little arrow above a zombie's head to tell the player that that zombie can be hit with a melee attack might not seem that egregious to most people, but actually, if you really think about it, the animation itself should be enough information for the player to say, okay, the zombie has done that animation and that seems to be when I can do this melee attack. That's how it worked in the original Resident Evil 4. When an enemy did a specific animation, you knew that it was time to go in and do that melee attack. But you didn't necessarily have to do it. If the audience is as dumb as Capcom is treating us with these additions, then the little arrow is basically saying you must do that melee attack. It's suggesting to the player that you should always do these melee attacks. But it might not necessarily be the best idea. The melee attacks have always been a risk-reward system. You're putting yourself in danger, you're getting closer to these zombies to pull off this melee attack. And sometimes it didn't work out, sometimes you wouldn't get there in time, and then you get hit by another zombie that was close by. Let's just think about the classic games and how the game designers thought about how they were giving players information without putting stuff on the screen like little button prompts and stuff like that, because button prompts weren't really a thing back in the PS1 era when you had Resident Evil and Silent Hill. The fixed camera angles would often change to bring items into the foreground, so it made it really obvious that that was an item that you should pick up. Or maybe secret items that the developers maybe didn't want you to find or would be more difficult to find. The camera angles could have, hid that behind something. So that was rewarding the player for checking every corner and exploring the game world. Even just the level design itself and environmental storytelling, like having blood trails going through certain areas, or how hospital beds would block certain pathways in Silent Hill. That kind of stuff was all designed to guide the player, but it felt like an organic thing in the world, like a plausible thing. One thing I've noticed about the Resi 4 Remake boxes and the windows is that they already have this effect on them, that it's like the lighting of the environment isn't affecting those boxes in the same way as everything else. So they already stand out, they already look slightly out of place. And the thing is, in the original and in any other game where you would search for boxes and stuff like that that could be broken, you knew that those boxes could be broken because they use the same models for those boxes. No other box uses that same model where you just suddenly can't break it and you're wondering, oh, why can't I break this box? It's always the same model. So if you see that model, you know you're going to be able to break the box. It doesn't then need the extra step of, well, this box has different lighting, so it's clearly standing out, and this box also has yellow paint on it, so I can 100% break this box. It's just unnecessary steps, and it actually makes the game look graphically a bit weird when those boxes and those windows are on screen. And you might say, well, Resident Evil 4 has an over-the-shoulder camera now, and we don't have the fixed camera angles anymore. Game designers can tailor the experience and tailor what the player is seeing as much as in those classic survival horror games. And to that I would say, well, it doesn't really matter either way, because Tomb Raider had an over-the-shoulder camera, but an integral part of the game was looking around, knowing your surroundings and seeing which ways you could go in the level design. And you knew that, for instance, if a block was movable, you could usually tell that from the model it was using, and you could go and move that. Or you could tell which environmental objects you could jump off of and what you could do. It was all a matter of looking at the level design. There was no icons or arrows showing you, oh, you can pick up this thing, or you can jump off of this ledge in a certain way. Or take the Arkham games, for instance, where R1 is just everywhere you go, on every single edge that you look at. R1, as if you are such a complete moron that you'll just forget the button for grappling. This game is of course a remake, so I don't expect that the level design will be much worse than the original. I expect it to be pretty true to the original. And from what I've seen, the game is looking really good generally, really polished, and improving upon a lot of things that made Resident Evil 4 good. However, we need to think of the implications of having this yellow paint on the boxes, as stupid and petty as that does sound, because I feel like this is dumbing down games. I feel like the developers with this are expecting players to just breeze through games, not really thinking much, not really being challenged, and just being along for the ride. And it's the same way that games are getting a lot more linear now, and especially during Resident Evil 4, 5 and 6 you can see that the games are getting dumber and dumber as it goes along. More linear, more quick time events, more expecting the player to just press the buttons that they're being told to press, rather than actually interacting with a game, an environment, and AI that is intelligently coming at you and creating these action set pieces. And the same can be said of the whole idea of survival horror and having ammo scarcity and things like that. If you don't search the environment for extra ammo and everything that you can possibly find, you're gonna have low ammo. So it's almost as if the designers don't want the players to be in that position. They just want them to breeze through the game and have an easy time. So yeah, I don't think that this is necessary, and I think it's a detriment to the game, and I hope that they have an option to switch it off. I've been Jake of the Retro Perspective. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.